friends. I'd like to welcome you to episode 5, right? No more fingers left on my hand. We're up to 5 now. My name is Mr. Campanell, and I will be doing some live coding with the R programming language, enjoying a little bit of MOOC Bank. Today we have tacos, cochinita pibil, from my brother-in-law, Chef Lou of Flipstixx. It's going to be delicious. And hopefully provide a little company for you and in the next 20 to 30 minutes. So let me get my tie loosened here and we can start to get started. Okay? All right. So today's episode, I'm going to be using the tidyr package. And this package is really good for reshaping your data frames. The two functions that I'm going to be using today are called pivot longer and pivot wider. And they're using pivot, so if you're an Excel user, you're probably thinking pivot tables maybe? And that's probably a good guess. This is a new name for these functionality, and there's a little bit more functionality on these in this package. It used to be called spread and gather, and if you go way back to tidy data, it was reshape and reshape 2 were the name of these functions. So it's starting to get a little bit more focused on what it does and what people are comfortable with using. So I'm going to bring in my libraries here today. So the first one is going to be our dplyr, right? Bring in dplyr. We're going to bring in tidyr. And this is the one that has the pivot functions in it. And I'm also going to bring in fucking paper. No, come on. I gotta get those right there. Read Excel. So I'm gonna sit here, run these things right now. Hit the run button on there. Brought in the libraries. So data set. You know, I've really been liking this OECD data set. It has a lot of features to it that can help me teach a little bit of these new tidyverse functions. So I'm going to keep on with that data set. I used it in episode 3, used it in episode 4. Now I'm going to use it in episode 5, and I'm probably going to use it again next week in episode 6. Because really what I'm going to do today is going to lead up to what we're going to do in episode 6. So first thing that I want to do is I want to read in my data set, but before I do that, I am going to copy and paste this link right here. If I can copy it. See it? No. Here I go. Here we go. Highlight it, Control C, and then it's going to be Control V right into the chat window. So you can download the data set. You can rename it. I just call it OECD.xls, and it goes into my downloads folder. But if you want to start working on it with me now, there it is for you. So let's get started, and let's read in the data. Like I said, used it in episode 3, used it in episode 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste, right? I'm going to make it easy. I'm not going to be doing mistyping on this one, but it's highly likely that I will. Here's our data set that we have right here from the OECD. Here's the table on it. I'm going to go to my website, Data Science Live, and I've got here episode 4. And I'm going to come down to the code that I have right here. I'm going to copy it here. All right, and then I'm just going to put my comment in here. Can I put my comment in here? Let's just read OECD data. All right, I've got the comment in here. I'm going to hit Control V to copy it, and just going to give you a little recap of what we did in episode 4 when we read in this data. If we pull it up, just let me see if I can pull it up here. You know, there's issues with the data. You have these header rows in the data. You have these footer rows. You want to get those things cleaned up. And then the way Read Excel brings it in, it doesn't give it all the correct names, so we have to do some renaming. So skip 3 is going to skip the first 3 headers. Nmax 42 is going to help us skip the bottom 2 footers, and then rename equals 2. I'm just using the column number in this. So let's just highlight this and run this code. And then I'm going to open up the data in the view. And as you can see, this is the data set that we're working with, the fertility rates data set. You have all the countries over here in the second column, and then all the rates by year over here. So that's our data set. I've got that read in. So the next thing that I want to do with this data is, and let's just kind of pull it up here again. For this data, I want to have just the decades. So we have 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000, and then we got some years from the 2000s and then 2010. So I just want to have the 5 columns from 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010. There's some missing data here in the 2010 column, probably because the OECD is collecting this data from the government statistical agencies, and it probably came late, so it just didn't get filled out. But we do have 2009 data, and I'm just going to carry forward this 2009 data so that I just have data for 2010. So just tell you how I'm going to start to do this one. So I'm going to call this, we're going to say, we're going to carry forward 2009 data. That's my code here. So I'm going to call this OECD, maybe underscore CF for carry forward. We're going to do OECD. We're going to pipe that into a mutate column, or to a mutate function. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. So mutate, and the column that it can create new columns, or you can update existing columns. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to update an existing column. And that column is, I have to put these backslashes here because it's numbers, the 2010 column. And I'm going to use the if-else function in dplyr. So if-else, and what am I going to say? I'm going to say is.na, all right, put these backslashes in here, 2010. And I'm going to say if that equals true, right? If NA equals true, then I'm going to say the value is going to be from 2009, not 2, 9, and else clause is going to be, well, we're just going to keep the data as it is, 2010, okay? And let me run this. I think I got all my parentheses in here properly. Yep, just checking that. So let's run this over. And let's see if it works. Okay, I got my second data set. Looks pretty much the same. Now, if we pull up this one, let's see. We've got these NAs in Canada and Chile. Canada and Chile. And so I'm going to pull up this data frame, and I should have data filled out for Canada and Chile in 2010. And it should be the same values that I have in 2009. And yep, that looks like that is correct. And if we kind of just scroll down the 2010 column, yeah, we have data all in here. So that's a good start. So the next thing that I want to do here is I just want to select my 5 decades, 70, 80, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. So I'm going to select, we're going to use the select that we used in episode 3. Select decades. Started the decades, right? All right, and I'm going to call this thing just decades. All right, it's data frame, and I'm going to use OECD underscore CF is my source data frame. And we're going to use the select function. And if you remember in episode 3, I used a helper, which was the ends with helper. I'm going to use that again here. Ends with, and put the quotes on this. And we're going to run this and see if that gives me our data frame. 42 observations and 5 variables. I'm just going to take a look and see what we got here. Okay. Oh, no, that's not right. Because I need to have country in here. So I'm going to put the country in my select statement. So let's go back here, and I want that in the first column of this decades data frame. We'll rerun that again. 6 variables, okay? And I've got the country in here now. Okay, now I've got the data frame kind of where I want it to be. And let me just close these down here and get us back to the code. So I've got the data frame where I want to do, and now I want to kind of reshape the data. And what I'm going to do here is, I shouldn't close that down. I'm going to take all these values here in these columns, and I'm just going to make one long row with all these values. So the function that I'm going to use here is I'm going to just call this one, we're going to reshape with pivot longer. And this is the tidyr function that will help you transform your data frame. So just going to call this OECD, maybe new, why not? And we're going to use our decades data frame. Okay, percent. And I'm going to do pivot longer. And the data, the calls. So the two things that we're going to use here is we're going to use names to, and we're going to use values to. And these are the things I'm going to change my names to, well, hold on. I need our calls first. I'm sorry. I get a little ahead of myself. I need the columns that we need, that we're going to use in this data frame. So the calls that we're going to use are, well, the decades columns, and it's a select statement. So I'm just going to copy and paste this ends with 0, because I think that will work. And then I'm going to start with names 2, and this used to be key, the key value that you want on here. So my names 2, I'm just going to have it for, I'm going to call it the years, because I want to have the years in my vertical column, or that gets transformed to rows. So we're going to call this year, and then values 2 is what I'm going to name the values in those columns, and that's going to be values 2. And let's see, I think I'll call that rate. Yeah, it's the fertility rate, so I'll just call it rate. So I'm going to run the code, and we're going to take a look at it if it works. Go. Okay, it looks like it runs. So we started with 42 records. Now we have 210 records and just 3 variables. So things have changed dramatically here. And so we'll take a look at the data set. So the first, let's just take a look at how this is what we started off with. We have our column with country and our fertility rates by with the years in here. And now we have our country. We have more rows for our country. There's usually 5 for each of the decades that we're looking at and each of the fertility rates. So we took a column that was kind of wide and we made it longer. Now, that's good, but for our next episode, I want to be able to have this to where I can select out little countries and start to do some visualizations. So we need to do something, we need to do another transformation on top of this transformation, and that transformation is going to be, it's going to be pivot wider. So let me take this down here, and we're going to put my comment in here with okay, and I'm just going to call this OECD final. And we're going to use OECD new. Okay, I'm going to pipe that into pivot longer. And I'm just going to use all the calls in this one. I don't need to specifically select here. And instead of names from, we're going to do names to. So names to here, to is going to be, what did I do? We need names, is that right? Yeah, we need names from, right? F-R-O-M. And that's going to be the country. I want it to be the country. And then what do we else we need here? We need values from, right? Why is that saying pivot longer? Oh, because I'm not doing the right function. I need pivot wider. That's right. Pivot wider here. We already did longer in the last one. Thank you for catching that for me. Okay. Thank you. Pivot wider. And what do we need here? We need, right, names from, and that's going to be country. And then we've got names, we got values from, values from, and we're just going to call that rate again. So I've got right here, pivot wider. Okay, I think that's going to work. And we're going to do another reshape here. So I'm going to run it. And OECD final. Oh, look at that. We went from 210 observations now to 5 observations and 43 variables. Oh, so let's take a look at this. Okay, so I've got my year over here in the first column. And then I have all the pivot rates, all the fertility rates by country for each of these decades. And we'll scroll it over here. So we have all the countries that were in the original data frame that, if we can go back to it, let's take a look at it here. So this is kind of what it originally looks like. And now this is kind of what we have it transformed as now. So that is kind of the basics of doing a data frame transformations with the tidyr package, pivotr, pivot longer and pivot wider are the key functions that we're using to do these transformations. And we're going to have a data set next week to do some visualizations with ggplot2. So now is the time for my MOOC Bank segment, and it's the time for you to, I'm just going to leave this code up here. Let me just kind of spread this down here, pull this down here, so that you can see the code that I'm working on. Give it a try for yourself in RStudio. I'm going to bring my, let me get this over here. I got to zoom out on this here, folks. Zoom out here and show you what I have here. This is my taco, cochinita pibil. It is a seasoned pork. I have some seasoned pork on here. I have some avocado, some cilantro. I put a little bit of lime juice on it on a corn tortilla. And so I'm going to eat it right now. And you can give your coating a try. So this is one of my favorite dishes here in at the Tex-Mex restaurants here in Texas. I think the flavors on it are just wonderful. Nice thing what Chef Lou did with this pork is he slow cooked it in and wrapped it up in banana leaves, which really gives it the nice textures and puts all the flavors of it together. So mukbang session is over. It's just a little bit of time for code review. So we're still using these OECD fertility rates data frame or data set. Read it in, had it cleaned up with these commands when we brought it in from episode 4 on some of the data cleaning in Excel. Next thing that we did was we carry forward the 2009 data because we had some missing data in the 2010 column, and I just wanted to have some data for the analysis or the visualization that we're going to do next week. So I used the mutate on an existing column, if else in dplyr, check to see if it was missing. If it was missing, put in the 2009 values, and if it wasn't, keep it with the 2010. Wanted to start use the columns for each of the decades, so we'll have 5 decades that we're going to be looking at, and also with the country, use the select statement, and we did this in episode 3 using the ends with helper function in select, and just selected all the ends with zeros for those decades. And then we used tidyr to kind of really reshape the data, making it, taking the columns and transforming them to rows. And then back, once we had that transformation, we did a little bit of craftiness with pivot wider, and basically took, I'll just bring it up here, put all the years into rows, and then put all the countries across into columns. So this is going to be good for us for next week. And that's it for this episode of Data Science Live. I'd like to give a shout out to McNamara Chiwe on the chat for keeping me company here. And I hope you learned a little bit on this lesson. I will post again the blog on Data Science Live. So, keep copying and pasting, keep practicing. It's how I learned, and it's how you can learn too. I'd also like to ask a favor, and that is to subscribe to my channels on Twitch, on YouTube, or Mixer, whatever you like to use, and turn on notifications so when I do go live, you can see the next episode. I do try to keep the episodes on Friday at this time every week. And I just appreciate your companionship with me here today. So until the next cast, goodbye for now, dear friends.